Public.
Okay, this is Mary Thomas, Chairman of the Capital Projects Committee. Our meeting is going to be adjourned February the 10th, 2020 at 2:30 p.m. All members are present from the committee. And first I'm going to start with giving you a little bit of a background of where things are. Nancy says it's on now. And I'm sharing my screen with you. Yeah, a feasibility study done by Hunts, and the title of it is Building Condition Survey, and that's exactly what it is. They took a survey of all of our buildings, and they put together information for us of things that needed to be worked on, not necessarily immediately, but things that as we start to improve our buildings and make our buildings last for longevity, these are the things that we are going to need to get into. They actually did it in two parts. They have building 1 and building 2. And I'm not sure why they use the term building, but building 1 and building 2. And under building 1, there are 3 priorities. And the priorities, as you can see them as they're on the screen. Priority 1 is infrastructure, the stormwater, health and safety issues, material upgrades, exterior envelope upgrades, mechanical, plumbing, and electrical. So that's a big piece of all of the projects for the most part. Priority 2 is site work, outdated space. Go ahead.
Mary, I'm just seeing the building condition survey, the first page of your PowerPoint.
It doesn't continue to go up. Are you seeing the same thing, Dr. Ulmer?
I'm seeing district-wide priority summary on my screen.
1, 2, and 3.
Well, I'll just look. I printed a copy out. I'll just use that.
Priority 2 is site work, outdated space renovations, LED lighting, clock/paging, additional health and safety issues. And priority 3 is building codes and ADA items, not immediate priorities, technology upgrades, and athletic field upgrades. Building 2, I don't have a special slide for that. Basically, building 2 is just a small section of additional upgrades that should be done, dealing with code updates for the most part. So if we look at what
Mary, I think the building 2 is the maintenance piece.
Oh, okay. That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are the items that Mark and I went through and said, these are items that are under the bid threshold and in the capacity of our maintenance team, and we can pull them out and put them into maintenance tickets and address them internally.
Okay. So the administration building, for those of you that have been around a while, know that that used to be an A&P building back in the day, and the district purchased it approximately 1997. These dates are approximate, but they're pretty close. So we have been in that building for almost 25 years. And according to Hunt's, these are the costs for the priorities that we would have to do, and then the maintenance, as they just said, it's $102,000, $103,000. I'll round it off. Our own maintenance people can handle those because of the cost for individual items. And so you can go back to the slide with the 3 priorities to see where most of those are. So this is the administration building, and the total for the administration building is approximately $2.9 million. You can see the details there. The Avis Elementary School was built in 1977. There have been no major renovations other than replacement of a roof, and we've also added air conditioning to that building. It was not there in 1977. According to our study, these is the cost of the things that would be needed at this point in time. And as far as the maintenance items, they're small. This is probably not our oldest building, but pretty close to our oldest building that has not had renovations done throughout the thing. And the total cost for the Avis Elementary, to bring it up, would be $8,700,000. And again, these are not things that have to be done yesterday to keep us ahead of the game. These are things as we start to look at our buildings and the wear and tear in our buildings, where we need to move, what the cost would be to move them forward and move them up to today's standards. Durasher Elementary that had a major overhaul in 2013, and it doesn't take long for things to get out of date codes wise. And you can see that to update this to where it totally should be, there were some things that were not done as the building was renovated. It'd be about $4,600,000. And you can see the priorities. Priority 1 and 2 are low, which is your basically infrastructure and stuff. That's where that's the things that were done. But priority 3 is almost $2 million. And as a refresher, priority 3 is building codes, ADA items. But as long as we're not working with that, we don't have to have those done immediately because they're grandfathered into the time of the construction. Technology upgrades and some athletic field upgrades potential.
Before you move on, Mrs. Thomas, I know that's something that even internally people questioned. That priority 3 is really where you see, like you said, code changes since we've updated that building, and how much codes can change in 7 years and what impact that will have on you if you try to go into a project. That really, code changes since the last time you did address a school can really be costly to a project.
And this is our building that had the latest update to it. Next one is the high school. The high school was opened in 1983. It built in 1983 open. I think that was the first year we had a graduating class out of there. It was, the major renovation was done in 2000, you know, these renovations go over a couple year time period, but in 2001 was the first year that the 9th grade, we call it the 9th grade wing, that was added to the building, was opened. And some renovation was done to the high school then at that time. If the office suite area, that area was totally redone. There was new ways that you went upstairs and that, and the cafeterias were repositioned. The cafeteria where it is now was not there. It used to be one of the CTE rooms, and they kind of switched places. But nothing was done behind the infrastructure stuff, such as your boilers, such as your plumbing, such as your things like that. It was more things visible other than the new addition that was added on. And so you can see at the high school, when you start to look at those, all of those seem a little on the high side, but that's because they've been there since 1983. And I remember for my own self that when we first went into that building, there was no boiler in the pool, and we used to have to heat the building from where the boilers are now all the way through the first floor, and it was kind of like a little bit crazy. But the only major renovations were surface renovations, other than adding the new wing for what was added for the 9th grade. It's not necessarily totally a 9th grade wing any longer. The total of this would be $15,100,000, and you can see that the things that our own maintenance people can do is approximately $162,000. Durasher Area Middle School, which was the Durasher High School, that excuse me, back to the high school for a minute. This year they did upgrade the lighting in our gym, and some people refer to it as the auxiliary gym. They did replace our lighting there with LED lighting. I think that's the only inside area of our schools that have the LED lighting. The Durasher Area Middle School was built in 1956. At that point in time, it was the high school. And it was in approximately 83 when the present day high school opened that this became the middle school. I was teaching at that point in time, and I remember when we moved our students from, which is now the Ty Dotton Mall, Lingles and that, Or it was in the middle of it was like the middle of the semester, beginning of the new semester, and kids had to bring a bag to school and empty their locker into the bag, and we walked them down that little walkway across where the baseball fields and that are, and we walked them into the building. So the E-wing, that was opened in 1956. The E-wing as it stands now was not always there as it is now. In the 80s, that main part of that was added. And then when their major renovations were done in 2001, the E-wing was expanded. There are 2 classrooms on the main floor and 2 classrooms on the second floor that were added. The classrooms were redesigned. But again, the original infrastructure and plumbing basically is not the original, because when we first opened the building, we were heating with coal. Then we went to heating with oil. Now we're heating with gas. And basically those boilers and things have been retrofitted to work. And so the middle school is probably the oldest building that we're dealing with, that we presently have, of the infrastructure that we have, and the cost for this would be about $12.8 million, according to our feasibility study. Salisbury Elementary was opened up in 1967. It had a renovation again around the same time. The high school and middle school was 2001. And I know they changed the front of the building. They added a cafeteria type thing. There weren't major changes. There were not major changes to it, but there was an upgrade in that 2001. Again, like with the other ones, your main infrastructure was pretty much the original infrastructure that was there. And the change to this building, upgrades to this building, if we would do everything, would be about $6,447,000. And so that's just like a little bit of an information point for those that are watching, and where we're at. Again, the title is called Building Condition Survey. So that's what it was. It was not, it told us what the conditions of our building, and from the standpoint of codes and the ages of the infrastructure, what was going to be needed to bring those buildings up to today's codes and infrastructure that we're using today. So these are the grand totals. So the total of the whole survey says that we need to be putting in about $50,500,000, and you can see the different priorities there. Our maintenance people can do about $500,000 of the work, and that's where things presently stand from this feasibility study. Now here's everything the buildings like together from the administration building in Salisbury Elementary, so you can kind of see where things are. You can see that the most cost basically would be the high school. Next is the middle school, and they are the 2 largest buildings, and they're the 2 largest buildings, and so obviously that would make them more costly. But the middle school is the one that's presently the oldest building that we have with our complex of buildings for the school district. And again, the building 2 part, which on this one here is closer to $700,000. Maintenance feels that over time they can handle those things. And then that's just a little bit information up front. Where do we go from here? What is the goal of this committee, and how and where do we start? So that's where we'll kind of open up our meeting. The first thing on the agenda is courtesy of the floor. Can we give them the phone number to call if anybody would like to call?
570-398-5576. Again, 570-398-5576, and it's 247.
And move to the D, Salisbury roof, being that that's probably a smaller item, then we can back and spend most of the time on letter C and discuss those situations. Mark, are you ready to talk about that Salisbury roof?
Yes. As most of you are aware, with the Salisbury roof, there's a little less than 14,000 square feet of roofing up there that's subject for replacement at some point in time. The last few years here, we've been getting an evaluation on the roof by year. The last one was actually a 2-year warranty that runs out in September. I have in next year's budget to extend that warranty one more year. And I'm pretty confident that's probably the last warranty that we're going to be able to offer on that 14,000 square foot of roof. That's the point where we'll need to get an approximate updated cost on that and see what we need, what we want to do with that roof, especially the roof that's a little less than 12,000 square feet. That covers the all-purpose room, cafeteria, stage, and kitchen area. There's a little less than 3,000 square feet that's a canopy that we could probably look at different ways for that, but the main roof over top of the building to keep weather tight, we're going to need to move forward with something on that.
Thank you. Anybody have questions, committee?
I just want to make sure I'm clarifying for the committee, Mark. You believe that the company that we're using on those warranties, they will only give you one more year?
Correct, and that will start at the end of September. It's probably a month in between, but it would relapse in September. It's, you know, the roof over top of the gym was a 2002 roof. It's a TPO roof. It's basically, it's a rubber membrane roof. We've gotten a lot of life out of that, and getting much more of it's probably a lot to ask.
So at this point, Mr. Wall, you have talked to the company whether they would extend that 1 year, or that's what the next step is?
I have it pretty much locked in for one more year.
Okay.
Starting in after the budget. It's in the budget for next year. So after the budget, if it gets approved that's when it'll go into effect. It's a 1-year extension.
Questions? Anybody on the committee? Okay, hearing none, we'll go back to letter C.
I got kicked off there for a minute and just got back on. How much does that extension cost us, Mark?
It's in the budget right now, I believe, for a little less than $4,000. It's like 3,800, I believe.
Thank you.
And how we typically do those with the warranty extension, if it's a long period of time, they will come inspect the roof, make sure it is something they will warrant, which this is. But the big legwork of this roof was done as far as the scanning, and that's where a lot of the money comes involved. But this roof, they basically come inspect the roof, visually inspect it for any kind of leaks, and they'll guarantee us to be weather tight for as long as the warranty is in place.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, you're identified, Dr. Ulmer, on letter C, so I'm gonna let you take over for a little bit.
So I phrased this part of the agenda so that the committee could discuss taking some of these recommendations to the board. So I will start with what the committee wants to take away from the building condition survey and what they would like to see come out of this. And I phrased it as goals. So what are our goals? Is our goal that the committee will recommend that we approach this from getting buildings up to code? Is it that we want to make sure that we extend the life of the buildings as far as we possibly can? Those are really where I wanted to drive this committee to make that recommendation to the board in terms of goals, is how will you approach this condition survey, and what do you want to take away from it to take back to the board and say, this is what we want to get out of this work?
Open for discussion.
So I would start by saying, like, I think I would still like to see something comparing, and it was in the original Hunt presentation at the meeting, the cost per square foot and the cost per student at the buildings. And then we have to make a determination, like, based on our overall student population, which has been declining for the last 20 years, whether those costs are justified for the students that we're serving. What we saw on the last time that this was done, the architect gave us estimates of the how utilized the buildings were. And at that time, they were saying that the buildings were, like, especially Salisbury and Avis, were both 50% capacity. Something along those lines. So at what point does it make sense, whereas the other buildings are more utilized? At what point does it make sense to invest $8 million renovating Salisbury or Avis? I think Salisbury was $6 million. Avis was $8 million for a building that's only half full. And then, try to figure out how to get the most bang for our buck in terms of efficiency with these things.
And I can understand that concern, and I agree with that concern. This particular study does not address any of that. And one of the things that you're saying about the capacity can be addressed in more than one way, and that's not part of what's on the study. And that's something that we can look into further. I mean, I don't have a problem with that, but that was not part of this study. And so is that one of the things that we need to do is to go beyond the study and look at those types of things.
Yeah, I believe we do. When you look at, if I recall, like $135 square foot per student in the two elementary schools that we're talking about, compared to the high school and middle school, which were all under 100. I mean, it's obvious that capacity is an issue, and before we can prioritize, I think we have to consider that as part of our major decision, because I agree with Dave. I mean, there's $14-15 million of renovations for those two schools that, what is the long-term outlook? And I just, we don't have $50 million, and we're not going to go out and borrow $50 million. So we have to start thinking, where is the best way to zero in on where we want to spend our dollars?
And I think, Wayne, if I could,
and it's like the roof. I mean, that's $300,000 or $400,000 that we're going to have to make a decision soon on that. So, I mean, the capacity is what it is, and I don't think it's gotten any better since Crabtree did the study. So I don't think that issue is not going to go away. I mean, we've got to zero in on operating as efficiently as possible, and these are all big ticket items. So I think we need to address them now and consider capacity.
And to be clear, I don't have a problem with spending $135 a square foot to renovate it, but if we're spending that much money, I want it used. I want it used by as many kids as it can be. That's part of the efficiency of it, is putting the renovation money in where it's used by the most students, that it makes an impact on the students. In my opinion. So that's where I'm at. Like, how do we, efficiency wise, get the most impact to the most number of students? Unfortunately, right now there's no Plan Con money, right? No. There hasn't been. There's no plan to extend that.
It's all on us. Whatever we do is going to be our money. So what I heard is a goal could be efficiency of district systems, and another goal could be maximize district funds. Like, whatever we do, regardless of whether we all right now agree with what we do, are we all in agreement that maximizing the use of our money and trying to make our system as efficient as possible are goals as we decide what we want to do with this information?
I agree with that. The other question that I would have with that is, like, Wayne says, we're not going to go out and borrow $50 million. I agree with that. We're probably not going to go out and borrow $50 million. But what is the amount, and we don't have that at our fingertips at this point, what is the amount that we can safely handle? And in a conversation I know that I had with Dr. Ulmer, he talked about, from another place, they looked at how much money can we borrow that keeps our debt service the same as it is now, other than extending it for another 20 years or 25, whatever that happens to be. So I think that's something that, in order to discuss this where something's going to move forward, those are three things that we need to know. The capacity thing, how do we make it more efficient? Maximizing the use of our money, and what is the money that we can be working with? If we can only be working with $5 million, we're in trouble. If we can be working with $35 million, we have some choices that we can make. So I think before we would start making any definitive decisions to give to the board, I think those are answers that we have to have. And I'm not sure that capacity efficiency belongs only in this committee. That might belong to the committee of the board as a whole.
And I will explain for the committee what my conversation with Mrs. Thomas was. What she said was, if we go to our financial planner and we say, I'm going to use simple terms, but if my car payment is $100 a month, but it's going to end in 2 years, and I go to the bank and say, what if I take that out for the next 10 years? Then, well, how much can I afford on my new car? That's essentially what we're talking about. If right now we're paying X amount, if we're paying $1,000 a month in our debt service, but it's going to end in 2030, I believe, Mr. Enders. If we can take that out for 30 years and lump that together, what amount of money can the district borrow and not change our debt service, not need to raise any more local funds to do that, but take that money out over longer term? That's the answer that we will have to get from our financial advisor.
But that is one part of it, in my opinion, because if we can become more efficient, we may be able to take on a little more debt as far as the annual debt payments if we're saving big bucks somewhere else. So obviously the first goal should be not to increase the annual debt service, but if we had to, because money is cheap right now, if we can find other ways to save money on an annual basis, those savings could go toward increasing our debt to some degree.
So kind of like what you're saying, Mr. Kinley, is like, if we can save X amount of money by installing LED lights everywhere, so we're saving a little bit of money, then we can use that savings for another project.
Yeah, because the debt service is simply another line item on our budget. And if, even if that goes up, if we can cover that through savings somewhere else as far as efficiency, I mean, that's, you have to play with the numbers, but I keep saying that borrowing money today is something we need to seriously look at to solve some of these. I mean, $50 million is nothing to sneeze at. Not that we're going to do all that stuff, but no matter what we do, we hardly have anything in our capital projects account. I mean, to generate funds, I mean, there's no way that I'm going to go to the public and say we're going to increase taxes to cover, capital expenditures. So I think we got to look at alternatives, and that borrowing is one, and efficiency is another.
Well, on the borrowing, Wayne, we need to know what our limit is there too, in order to make rational decisions. We can't say, okay, we can go and borrow, but we need to know where our maximum amount that we can borrow. It could be 20 million, it could be 30, it could be 40. I don't know that. And I'm sure Ben can't just come up with an answer on that immediately either. That's something they're going to have to do a little research on.
Well, I believe there's a ratio that Ben, I'm sure, is aware of, that last time it seemed like there was a presentation. We're in decent shape. I mean, obviously we still have debt, but
that presentation that you're referencing, Mr. Kinley, and that number is always part of the budget presentation that's done, I believe, at the end of April. So that information, I think that presentation is not on the website, but I could pull it up quick and tell you exactly what the number is if you give me a second from last year's budget.
Well,
and I think the debt load, typically, if I remember correctly, our maximum debt load has been in previous years somewhere between 70 and $75 million that they say we can afford. I'm not saying I believe we can afford.
It's not that you can afford it. It's the amount that you're allowed.
Yeah, that's what we're allowed to borrow.
Yeah. And so I added another goal to our list, and that is not increase costs. Which I think that's what I heard from the committee is whatever we do, we don't want to drive district costs higher than they already are.
Right.
Any,
What is our present debt service yearly?
Well, one of the conversations I was going to have with Dr. Homer as we look at this current present debt service number is I think we need to look at that not net of debt of the plan con reimbursement, but in grand total. Follow what I mean there?
Yeah. But I mean, you're paying debt service on a monthly basis. I was under the impression that we're paying about $1 million a year. Is that correct, or is it less?
It's more.
It's more.
Give you the first number first. Your debt limit that I presented to you last April 27th was just shy of $91 million. And that's based on adjusted revenue numbers. And like I said, that's in the PowerPoint presentation that's probably attached to the April 27th board agenda. So question number 2 is your annual debt payments. This year, 2021 is $3,038,000, so 3.038. Last year it was just under $3 million. In 21-22, it'll be $3.1 million. And then it goes down the following year in 22-23 to 2.6, and it kind of starts leveling off at 2.6. So there is a spike in 25-26 of 3.3.
Won't our outstanding principal at the end of 21 be around 25 million or less?
You're correct. It's 24.619.
When was that, Ben?
That will be as of June 30th of 21.
Okay.
So what was that again, Ben?
The outstanding debt at June 30th of 21 will be $24.619 million.
Thank you.
And then all these data points will be on the budget presentation this year. I want to make sure we're all very clear. All those numbers I gave you, especially the payments, do not include our reimbursements.
Okay.
I cannot make that clear enough. One thing to consider there is our financial advisor, Jamie Doyle from PFM. I told Jamie the very first time I talked to her when I started 4 years ago, I said, every time I talk to you, I will always ask you, can we refinance? I have held true to that every time I talk to her, anytime on the phone. And she laughs at me every time. I said, Jamie, it's going to happen every time. We are basically, our debt, the interest rates are so low, we probably have very few opportunities again to refinance. So just so if you have any thoughts of, well, we could potentially do a refi, it probably is not going to happen.
When you say that it probably is not going to happen, are you also excluding that we could add to it and roll the whole thing together?
Yeah, we could do that, but probably it's not going to be beneficial to bring on another debt service or another bond into a new bond, because the interest rates probably are not going to be in favor of doing that. But I can't. That's where her expertise comes in.
Okay.
But that's definitely, yeah, you're correct. They've done that in the past.
And I think leave it after this meeting. That's an action item for Ben and I to have that conversation. And she could come and give a presentation to the board and explain what that could look like. And typically what they'll do is they'll give you like They won't give you the best case scenario because they like to say they did a really good job. So they'll come in and they'll give you a presentation and they'll give you kind of an average of what they think you'll be able to do. And then almost always when they go out,
Shop it around.
shop for prices, the bond comes back a little better than what they predicted. But we can talk to her about getting that presentation put together for the board, so you know what your capacity is.
Yeah, it would be nice to know different scenarios, whether it's 5 million, 10 million, 15 million, so we have sort of like a point of reference, something to compare.
And wouldn't we want to get those other numbers that would allow us to calculate days concerns at the same time?
Get someone to determine the capacity of the buildings, Craig?
Right.
So when you engaged Hunt for a building condition survey, they had an option for, they called it I think it was educational plan survey that you could add to the study. They will do that for an additional cost, but that would be something we would have to take back to the board for approval.
But as far as the capacity of the buildings, we have that information. And we don't have it at our fingertips today, but we have that information that we can talk to the board about and then go from there as to some scenarios that they may want to look at. I don't consider the capacity thing our role as capital projects. Not initially. It might become our role later, but we don't.
I don't think they're going to want to combine the capacity that we got from Crabtree. And frankly, there was a lot of questions on what that capacity number was, whether it was accurate or not.
Everyone seems
So I think this gives us a chance. I mean, it'll be costly, but it'll give us a chance to kind of reset that number.
Well, could they give us some kind of proposal, and which would include the scope of what they're going to do, and of course the related costs, so that we have an idea what we're getting for what we might be willing to pay?
Yes, they would do that. I can get that. I made a note, Mr. Kinley. I will get them to give you a proposal.
Okay, thanks.
So that's going to come from Hunt we're talking about.
Yeah.
And we're also going to look at Jamie Doyle and them for the money. But I thought you had a third goal that you wrote down, Dr. Homer.
I wrote down efficiency of systems, maximize district funds, figure out what we can borrow, not increase costs, and then get a proposal about capacity.
Committee, are you all in agreement? Those are the things we need to find out next before we move on? Wayne, David?
Yes, I think that's a complete list, and yeah, that if we had that information, we could better prioritize and go to the next level.
Okay.
I agree. I agree with Wayne.
Ditto.
So for the next board meeting, you should be able to have something from Jamie possibly, and you'll definitely have a proposal from Hunt. And then we, as a board, we need to look at, is this the way we all want to move forward? We'll make the recommendations of those 4 things to the board and go from there. Anything else for the Capital Projects Committee at this time? This is not our normal one where we discuss the next. So this is a sort of like a special meeting, and we'll probably be having another one in between before the May one comes up. But so at the board meeting, we'll look at those 2 things and have a discussion on what else we talked about, and we'll see the direction the board wants to go. Well, whether we go into the next survey proposal from Hunt determines where their next time frame, what determines what our next time frame is.
I agree, Mrs. Thomas.
Anything else for the good of the order?
This committee then is recommending the points that Dr. Ulmer had just stated, correct?
Right. And if possible, Ben, we have the minutes for the next board meeting. That would help out too. I mean, I know we usually get behind on that, but the board that's not, because I know there's some board members watching and there's some that are not, but that'll give them an idea of where the committee is and what direction we're going at this point.
Well, I think for the board members that aren't able to watch, Dr. Ulmer, aren't all these, since they're now virtual, recorded and posted on our quote unquote YouTube page, so they will be able to view it at any point in time.
Could you put that in your update, Dr. Ulmer?
I will do that.
Is that true? I wanted to confirm that was clarification and confirmation of,
I
right?
have to check with Pat on that one.
Yeah, it's true. You can go back and watch old meetings, and
when are they posted?
I will, as soon as we finish and technology closes it, it's posted. So
Okay.
they could watch them later today, and I will put a note in my update that we're going to discuss the recommendations of this committee at the next meeting. And I think we could do that under old business, Mr. President, since we have already done a feasibility study. We can bring this back. We can put this under old business, and then we can give them a forewarning that these will be the items.
Sounds good. And we could actually list it in the old business. You know, a lot of times the old business from a meeting to meeting, it tends to be pretty loose as far as what we bring in, but that we would actually be able to list it as an agenda item under old business.
Anything else for the good of the order? Hearing none, we will adjourn this meeting and we'll see where we go next from the next board meeting. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Have a good day, everybody.